Hello, Matt Zook again. The first piece introduced the idea of Kirchhoff social systems or Kirchhoff networks. These are networks where they're secure, even if the attacker knows everything about the network, the design, the code, but all they don't know is a private key. Um, so now what I'd like to talk about in this piece is what you can build on top of these networks. And this starts with the specific example of the Crown Network and the idea of a social contract. We'll start off with a brief aside. The musical Hamilton is an amazing work of art. The music is the script, which you can stream all kinds of places. In particular, the thing that struck me about it was the end of the first act. Burr and Hamilton sit down and are singing to their children about the world that they're trying to create. And I think that's worth thinking about because, with our technology now, we're imagining what the world is going to be for our children. We're creating that. And, if you think about what the American Revolution really was about, it's those battles for human freedom, the battles for people to have rights, basic rights, continue. And then, as discussed in the last piece, life's complicated. So there's also the fact that Hamilton's singing this song to a son who ends up dying defending his honor. So there are no guarantees in any of this. And the nobility is in the struggle, and in the struggle to build a better world. So, people get idealistic about Bitcoin and cryptographic systems and everything, but there really isn't the idea of how they build a better world. It ends up involving some kind of magic emergent properties of how hordes of people will come up with the right decisions. It's an interesting idea. As far as I can tell, what we've always done within society is, as referenced in the papers, you have a shared imagination. There's some sort of shared understanding, and there are implicit and explicit contracts limiting and defining social interactions everywhere. So it would seem like, whether explicitly or implicitly, you need to define the rules of play in a system before you get going. What we're trying to do with the Crown Network and this project is we're trying to start out with the assumption that what is given, what we're not going to question, and then you can call that sacred if you want, or use other language to describe it, is human agency or freedom. And then this assumption that this is the one thing that isn't open to question, that people should be free, they should be engaged, serves as the seed for then what we build on top of everything else. One of the original things that brought me to the Crown Project was that in the old website there was a Knight's Code which had was written into the blockchain in some way. And I thought that was interesting because it was the only project where there was, or at least the only one that I saw, where there was an explicit concept of a social contract from the beginning. And if you conceive of these things as social systems and there isn't a social contract, then that's it's one of those things where you should check and make sure you know where your wallet is, because somebody's trying to take your money. If you're playing a game where nobody's told you what the rules are and you have to kind of infer them or figure them out. So I thought that was interesting, and then talking with the guys, it was a constructive group of people who were trying to be inclusive and build a community and help me start learning about these systems. So then as we were looking at taking the next step with this project, one of the issues was, how do you continue to develop what the social contract is, or the assumptions for building a community are here, so that people know what we're about, because the project isn't about enabling people to do things that you shouldn't be doing, for lack of a better way of putting it, or doing things that hurt people. The idea is to be a platform where people can be engaged, where people whose voices might not be heard can be heard, where, if you're a kid who's coding and has certain skills, you can develop those skills, and you're welcome to come here and play with helping develop the platform. So there are different pieces kind of implicit in putting this together. There's ideas from Scott Page, and the difference that if you're going to have a diverse distributed group, you can do that, but you need to have shared goals and shared language. What gets you cacophony in groups is people who are working on different goals, and people who are speaking and may say the same word, but it may mean different things to them. So part of the idea of having the knowledge, this set, is to start to build a framework of shared goals and shared knowledge. And within that, then, if we need to have shared goals, then we want to have all kinds of diversity, except the one thing we can't really have diversity on are the goals. Now, what exactly are the goals? Well, that'll be defined by the project as it evolves. And so you just go through and you start building up what the assumptions are here, what we take as given. I broke it down into 4 sections: organization, perspective, governance, and purpose. There's no absolute magic there, and this is really intended to be the starting point for discussion over time. And it's also, ideally, it's a place where, if there are people who are involved in policy debates or involved in an academic setting, this is a place where they can interface with the system that we're building, and a discussion of what the community is about. We're not trying to just be an open source code base. This is a social system, and if you want it to have more relevance over time, you have to be able to open up the discussion in different ways. So this isn't meant to be the end of the discussion, but the beginning of the discussion. I've highlighted kind of one piece of each of the sections because I think they're important. Within organization, work is best done in small groups with common goals and shared language. If what you actually want is human engagement, you don't get individual human engagement in large groups. It just doesn't happen. Behavior in large groups tends to move in the direction of sort of mob behavior, and if you kind of take it back to your Marx, then large groups are alienating to what we think of as human. So now this is really kind of a crazy idea if you think about how our economy is dominated by large corporations, but it just seems to be accurate. Another simple thing is just the idea that human progress comes from human action, or it's what people do. So it's not what magical artificial intelligence is going to do. It's not anything separated from what some individual somewhere was able to accomplish. And so you're just trying to bring things back to people, because we're probably at an interesting historical point now where you start to get entities that are acting that are not people. So in its own primitive way, you can argue that this is, since most activity in financial markets is already algorithmic, it's bots trading against bots. You're seeing kind of these primitive machine entities, and they're just going to get more evolved. So it seemed like it might make sense to build a system focused on humans. Crazy idea. And then under the governance piece, freedom of commerce is a fundamental right similar to the freedom of speech. You can argue that that's kind of what Citizens United says. So in an ironic way, you could say that if effectively the Supreme Court's already ruled that money is speech, then I'm not sure if anybody's tried to link that up to what that means for something like a Kirchhoff social system or a cryptocurrency. But the basic idea here is also just to go back to anthropologically. It's like, one of the things that's made humans unique is the propensity to trade. And so and within trade, building social systems. And so, it's just allowing people to maintain that right, or add that to their rights. And then bringing it back at the end. Crown's purpose is to enrich, empower, and ennoble individual lives. I'm sure there's a better way of saying this. But this is about trying to build something that's about people, and about building a distributed system which also distributes opportunities to individuals who take the initiative, teach themselves, and learn. Nobody's doing anything for anybody else, but that's at the center of why I'm doing this. So that's all nifty. That all sounds really good. Where's all this go? Shared beliefs and goals, shared language, enable distributed governance. So what's about to happen for the Crown Network is we'll turn on the proposal system, and the community will get to vote on what's developed. Functionally, what's the community here? The community are people who are running Trons, which are the same thing as master nodes. So this really, what's happening is your first governing body is effectively a senate of token holders who are operating nodes on the network. And so the core team is, with this next update, effectively handing over governance to this senate. And that's the first layer of this evolution. Now, that's not the end point of governance, and there will still be mining on the chain at this point. But if you look at governance structures, we'll need to also develop not just a Senate, but also a Commons or a House of Representatives, which will probably be done through smaller wallets and staking. And those smaller wallets which are staking will also be, we would want to get functionality in the network out of those at the same time. So that's where the idea of the Chronos nodes, which are service nodes, timekeeper nodes. So then those allow you to get greater granularity of time on the network. But you are also starting to build out the concept of ways for people with smaller amounts of wealth, but some verifiable amount, to also offer services on the network. And then as those service nodes get built out, then service node operators would be, we would see them as being part of the governance structure as well. And so you start to create a multi-layered structure, and we're not trying to really reinvent anything. We're just trying to build on what have been resilient forms in the real world, and build a structure where it's also based on ideas which have some basis in law in different places, and then also build the legal bridge to how this system works. And with that, just create something that's of mainstream use and value. So you have a distributed system with distributed opportunities, but where, for instance, with the application nodes, or with the trons, which would be ultimately functioning like cloud application servers, where the trons would be able to offer registered applications, and they would get paid for that. But because you know where a master node is running, then you can have a clear bridge to, what's the law for running the application on that server in that location, and what are the responsibilities of that node operator. This is one of the, I don't know how Ethereum deals with the fact that you have an application running on nodes where there are different laws about what applications can do in different jurisdictions. So we're trying to build something where it's just makes sense, it can evolve, people can get engaged, and we don't think we're geniuses. I know I'm not a genius. My wife reminds me of that every morning, and my children remind me of that every evening. So but I do think that we can do better in terms of the world that we're building our children. I was listening to a piece by W. Kamau Bell where you have older guys who are in the gangs in Chicago talking about the issues around social media for the younger guys there. And so I can sit in Silicon Valley, and what has been built and the way it commodifies and manipulates our children is actually a universal social issue. And we're not dumb. People know what's going on, and I think the problem is corporations don't have an incentive to do anything but commodify or monetize. And so part of the challenge is, how do we build a platform where there are opportunities for monetization, where there are affordances or connection points for businesses, but where the platform itself, that core, isn't about that. And that'll be the next piece. So anyway, thank you for listening. Take care.